You ever feel like your family only sees you when they need something from you? Yeah, that's kind of been the theme of my life lately, but it wasn't always like this. Or maybe I just didn't notice until it smacked me across the face, publicly, with a $1,200 price tag and a fake smile. My name's Mitchell, I'm 31, and I come from one of those families that always looks picture perfect on social media, smiling vacation shots, matching Christmas pajamas, everyone commenting heart emojis, and family goals. But behind the filtered photos and overly staged birthday cakes, there's this unspoken hierarchy, and I've always been somewhere near the bottom of it. I'm the only boy in a family of 3 kids, middle child, if that explains anything, and my sisters, Lauren, 35, and Ivy, 28, have always gotten more bandwidth. Lauren's the classic firstborn, organized, bossy, always had a clipboard in her hand even when she was 5. She works in finance, drives a Tesla, and somehow makes you feel poor even when she's being humble. Ivy, the youngest, was the baby everyone fawned over. Artistic, dramatic, effortlessly pretty, and the one who somehow convinced my parents to co-sign on her photography studio lease without even showing them a business plan. Meanwhile, I'm just Mitchell, the dependable one. I've got a decent tech job, a modest apartment, and a knack for staying out of drama, until I was dragged into the middle of it at Ivy's destination wedding last month. You need to know, I've always tried to be the glue, the peacemaker, the one who just shows up, supports, keeps the peace, and lets everyone else shine. Maybe it's a middle child thing. Maybe it's a Mitchell thing. I've paid for birthday dinners, helped Lauren move, twice, helped Ivy redesign her website for free, and never once asked for anything in return. But this wedding, this was something else entirely. This was the first time I started to see just how invisible I'd become to the people I kept showing up for. When Ivy got engaged to her fiancé Drew last year, the announcement came with the usual squealing group chat messages, Pinterest boards, and a suspiciously fast decision to have a destination wedding in Positano, Italy. My parents were immediately thrilled. "Oh my God, Ivy, it's going to be magical," my mom had gushed. Lauren immediately began micromanaging travel arrangements like she was planning a royal summit. And me? I congratulated her, sent a thumbs-up emoji, and assumed I'd be flying coach and sitting at some side table with my uncle's new girlfriend. I was wrong. It was worse. It started subtly, little things, like how I wasn't included in the wedding planning group chat, or how Ivy never asked if I could actually afford a week-long trip to the Amalfi Coast. The group flights they coordinated? Way out of my budget. The hotel they picked? 5-star. Ivy never once asked if I needed help. Just sent me a link to the group hotel booking site with the note, "We're all staying here." Like it was an invitation, not an instruction. Still, I didn't complain. I booked my own flight. Found a more modest boutique hotel down the road. Bought new dress shoes because mine were scuffed. And then Ivy hit me with a bombshell. "Hey Mitch, quick question. Can you be a bridesman?" "A what?" Ivy explained that she was doing a gender-inclusive bridal party. Lauren was maid of honor. A couple of her friends from college were bridesmaids, and she wanted me to be a bridesman so we'd have symmetry in the photos. "It'll mean a lot to me," she said, blinking those big doe eyes she always used to get what she wanted. "Plus, I already ordered the outfits for the wedding party. I just need you to Venmo me for the suit. It's like $1,200 total, but it's custom-tailored and will look amazing in pictures." I laughed. I actually thought she was kidding. She wasn't. I hesitated, but again, I caved. Told myself it was a once-in-a-lifetime moment. That maybe this would be a chance to feel a little more seen, more included. So I Venmo'd her. $1,200. Gone in 3 seconds. Ivy sent me a heart emoji and a photo of the swatches. It's this gorgeous sandy beige. So neutral. Leading up to the wedding, my inbox filled with emails from her wedding coordinator, who I later learned was just her college roommate pretending to be a pro. There were schedules, outfit guidelines, even a social media etiquette PDF that told us what filters to use and when we were allowed to post photos. Spoiler, not until Ivy did first. I started to feel weird about the whole thing. There were multiple Zoom calls for the bridal party, and I was either not invited or added last minute, then ignored the whole time. I felt like a prop. Ivy kept saying, "Mitch, I'm so glad you're part of this," but she never actually included me in any meaningful way. When I asked simple questions like, "Do I need to prepare a speech?" she'd just wave it off with, "Oh, No, just show up, smile, and look hot. Whatever. So I showed up. Italy was beautiful. Postcard perfect. Lemon trees, sparkling water, cobblestone alleys straight out of a movie. I got there a day early, checked into my little boutique hotel, and texted Ivy to let her know I'd arrived safely. No response. I figured she was busy. The next morning, I saw a flurry of Instagram posts from Ivy and the bridal party sipping Prosecco on a yacht. No invite. Not even a text. I commented something dumb like, "Looks amazing," and got a heart emoji back. That night, Lauren sent me the updated ceremony schedule. "Hey, just so you know, rehearsal's at 4, but Ivy says you don't need to come. Just be ready by 3 p.m. day of." Wait, what? I texted Ivy. "Hey, just checking. Am I still walking with someone during the ceremony? Didn't see my name on the updated lineup." Her reply was instant. "Oh right, meant to tell you. We actually had to reconfigure the procession so it flows better for the photos. It's nothing personal, promise. You'll still be sitting in the front rows though." XO. I just stared at the screen. Nothing personal? I paid $1,200 for a suit I'd never wear again. Booked a transatlantic flight. Took PTO. And now I was being cut from the ceremony like some extra who didn't make the final edit? I sat with that for a while. Didn't say anything. Try to be chill. It's her big day, Mitchell. Don't make it about you. That voice in my head that always tried to keep the peace. Keep the status quo. Then came the final straw. The morning of the wedding, I was getting ready, doing everything right. Showered, shaved, steamed the suit. I showed up to the venue early just in case. A little cliffside chapel overlooking the water. Sun shining. Guests arriving in waves. I slipped in through the back and went to find Ivy just to say congrats, wish her well. She was in a separate room with Lauren and the other bridesmaids, fussing over makeup and hair. I knocked gently, stepped in, and Ivy barely looked up. "Oh hey," she said flatly. Then, after a pause, "You might want to sit toward the back row. The lighting is just not great up front. And honestly, no offense, but you don't really photograph well, and this day isn't about you, right?" I blinked. I opened my mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. Nothing came out. That was the moment. That was the line. That was when something in me, something I didn't even know I was holding back, snapped like a frayed cord. And I smiled. "Of course," I said quietly. "It's your day." I walked away. I sat in the back row, like she told me. I watched the ceremony from a distance. Let them have their perfect pictures, their pastel dresses, their Instagram-worthy backdrop. And then I waited. Waited until the vows were done. Until the I do's were said. Until everyone applauded, and the photographer started clicking rapid fire. And that's when I stood up. That's when I walked forward. Because I had something for the groom. Something I wasn't planning to share. Something that was about to change everything. I didn't make a scene. That part's important. There was no yelling, no dramatic moment, no grabbing the mic or storming the altar. I didn't come to ruin the wedding. I just came to finally participate. On my terms. For once. I waited until the applause died down. Ivy and Drew were still facing the officiant, hands intertwined, backs to the guests, completely in sync with the fantasy she'd built. The rows of white chairs, the blush and gold floral arch, the soft ocean breeze lifting her veil like something out of a bridal magazine. Everything was perfect. Picture perfect. And then I stood up. Slow. Calm. Quiet. I stepped out of the back row and made my way down the side aisle, hands in my pockets, sunglasses still on, heart pounding hard enough I could feel it in my throat. I didn't look at the guests. Didn't need to. I knew they were watching. I wasn't supposed to be here. Not really. When I reached the front row, I turned and made eye contact with my father. He looked confused, then annoyed. My mother shot me a tight smile and shook her head, mouthing something I didn't bother reading. But Lauren? Lauren's eyes widened like she'd just realized she forgot to lock the front door and heard a noise upstairs. I paused just behind the bridal party. Drew turned first, noticing the movement. He blinked in confusion and tilted his head, trying to place me in a memory that had been cropped out. "Mitchell," he said, like he wasn't sure. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a small, neatly folded envelope. "Congrats," I said and held it out. He looked at it, then at me. Then he took it, hesitantly, like I might be handing him anthrax and monogrammed stationery. He opened it right there, in front of everyone. And as his eyes scanned the paper inside, just 2 printed pages, double-spaced. I watched the color drain from his face like someone had pulled the plug. He didn't speak, didn't move, didn't even blink. I turned around and walked back to my seat. That was it. I didn't explain, didn't gloat, didn't have to, because the damage was already done. But to understand what I gave him, what made his jaw tighten and his hands tremble and Ivy whip around in confusion seconds later, you need to know what led me to that moment. The part of the story they won't post on Instagram. Because it wasn't just the wedding. It was everything before it. It was all the years I let things slide, all the birthdays spent at someone else's celebration, all the times I was the designated photographer, driver, tech support, emergency babysitter, and emotional punching bag. It was the slow suffocation of never being seen unless someone needed something. It was the way my parents still talked about Ivy like she was the sun and the rest of us were just orbiting debris. But most of all, it was the week leading up to the wedding. The week that finally made me see it all for what it really was. I arrived in Positano 5 days before the ceremony. Ivy had sent a schedule in the group email, brunches, fittings, excursions, but made no mention of which ones I was expected at. So I texted Lauren, "Hey, just landed. Do you know if I'm supposed to be at the welcome dinner tonight?" Her reply, "That's mostly for the bridal party, but you can come if you want." If I want. Right. I ended up skipping it. Ate dinner alone at a small cafe by the cliffs. Paid extra to sit by the water. Watched the sunset over the wine-dark sea and told myself I wasn't hurt. That I liked being alone. That I preferred it this way. The next morning, I showed up for the scheduled group beach day, figuring it would be casual. Ivy saw me, looked surprised, and said, "Oh, I thought you were doing your own thing today?" Then she turned back to her friends and kept talking like I hadn't said a word. I sat in the sand with a paperback, 20 feet away, pretending not to notice that they never offered me a chair. That night, I found out they had a private dinner reservation I wasn't invited to. 2 days before the wedding, we had the so-called bridal party bonding night. I was told it was optional, but Ivy had included me on the text invite, so I assumed I was supposed to show up. I got there right on time, dressed nice, gift in hand, only to walk in and find everyone already seated around a long table lit with candles and string lights. Every chair was taken. Ivy looked up and said, "Oh shoot. I totally forgot to tell them we had one more. I didn't know you were coming." Then she turned to one of her bridesmaids and whispered something that made them both giggle. I left after 15 minutes. Went back to my hotel, undid my tie, and stared at the ceiling wondering why I even bothered flying halfway across the world just to be treated like an accessory that didn't match the outfit. I called my best friend back home. He asked me if I was okay. I told him I was fine. I wasn't. The day before the wedding was the rehearsal. That's when it became official. Lauren pulled me aside in the morning and said, "Hey, so?" Ivy decided to keep the processional simple. She felt like too many people were confusing the flow. But she still really wants you there. She said just to hang in the back row and cheer her on. I blinked at her. "Lauren, I paid over $1,000 for this suit. I was supposed to walk with Jess, wasn't I?" "She's walking with Dylan now," she said, then looked over her shoulder. "Mitch, don't take it personally. It's not about you." She kept saying that. Like I was some narcissist throwing a tantrum about attention. Like being excluded after shelling out thousands and showing up in good faith was just some scheduling error. That afternoon, while everyone rehearsed, I sat in the grass near the chapel and watched them move through the lineup. Ivy kept glancing my way, but never came over. Never apologized. Never even asked how I was feeling. And that's when the shift happened. I realized it wasn't that I was invisible. It was that they saw me clearly and just didn't care. They knew I'd show up anyway. They knew I wouldn't make a fuss. They knew I'd smile through it, take the photos, and go home quietly. I was the safety net, the quiet one, the good sibling. And they were right. For a long time. But not anymore. That night, I took a walk. Down the winding streets of Positano, past the lemon trees and shuttered storefronts and flickering lanterns. I sat on a bench overlooking the ocean, opened my notes app, and began typing something I'd been sitting on for months. It was an email Ivy had accidentally forwarded me last year, something meant for her accountant and not me. Inside were details about her photography business, including some interesting financial numbers. Namely, a $14,000 investment Drew made that she told him was to upgrade her gear, but was actually spent on cosmetic procedures and a private yoga retreat in Bali. I only knew this because she bragged about it to Lauren on a drunken call, not realizing I was still on the group FaceTime. I hadn't said anything. At the time, I didn't want to cause drama. Now, I drafted a clean summary. Included screenshots, bank transfer logs, a clipped quote from Ivy herself, telling Lauren, "Drew's so clueless, it's like free money." I printed it at a local shop the next morning, folded it into a discreet envelope, tucked it into my suit pocket, and waited. So yeah, that's what I handed him. That's why Drew stood there, motionless, as Ivy twirled toward him in her $6,000 dress, ready for their first official kiss as husband and wife. He didn't kiss her. He didn't move. He just stared at the paper like it was unraveling everything he thought he knew. And I sat down in the back row, folded my hands in my lap, and exhaled for the first time in weeks. Because I knew the dam had cracked. I just didn't know how fast the flood was coming. They say when a glass shatters, it never breaks the same way twice. That's how the aftermath felt, like something beautiful and fragile had finally been dropped, and now all the pieces were scattered in directions no one could control. After I handed Drew that envelope, everything moved in slow motion. I saw Ivy tilt her head, confused by the way he just stood there, eyes glued to the pages, mouth slightly open, color draining from his face by the second. The officiant paused, unsure whether to continue. The guests murmured. Ivy touched Drew's arm and whispered something to him, probably thinking he'd lost his place in the ceremony or got choked up from emotion. He didn't respond, didn't even look at her. Instead, he lowered the pages slowly, looked up, past her, past the officiant, past everyone, and made direct eye contact with me. And then he stepped away, didn't say a word, just stepped back from the altar, turned on his heel, and walked off the platform in front of 130 guests. No announcement, no dramatic speech, just quiet, deliberate steps down the aisle and out the arched stone doors of the chapel. That was the last anyone saw of Drew for the next 48 hours. And I sat in the back row while the entire wedding dissolved into stunned silence and whispering chaos. Ivy turned bright red. Her mouth fell open, her eyes darting between the doors and the crowd, looking for someone, anyone, to tell her what the hell just happened. Then she turned and saw me. Really saw me. I saw the flicker of recognition, then the realization. Her face twisted, hurt, betrayal, rage. And for a split second, I thought she might charge down the aisle and slap me across the face in her wedding dress. But instead, she just let out a shaky breath, turned to the guests, and forced a trembling laugh. "Okay, wow. So, quick intermission, I guess," she chirped, like it was some planned flash mob moment. Some people chuckled. Some didn't know what to do. My parents looked horrified. Lauren just stared at me, jaw clenched so tight, I thought her teeth might crack. I didn't stay for the reception. I didn't go back to my hotel either. I packed my bag, got in a cab to Naples, and booked the next available flight back to the States. I turned my phone off, blocked the family group chat, spent the entire flight with my hoodie up and noise-canceling headphones on, trying to breathe through the emotional hangover curling in my chest like a slow burn. Because here's the thing nobody tells you about revenge. Even when it's justified, it's still lonely. It still hurts. I wasn't proud of what I did. I wasn't even sure I'd made the right call. But I knew one thing for certain. I was done letting them walk all over me like a doormat with a decent credit score and no spine. Done being the family ghost, only summoned when someone needed a ride to the airport or a new website banner. I got home late Sunday night and walked into my quiet little apartment, still dressed in my wrinkled suitcase dragging behind me like a defeated limb. The silence was deafening. I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the floor for what felt like hours. What now? That question kept circling my brain like a buzzard. I hadn't just burned a bridge. I'd set the whole damn coastline on fire. And for a while, that isolation was crushing. My phone was flooded with messages, some furious, some pleading, some just confused. "Lauren, what the hell did you do? Mom, you embarrassed your sister in front of everyone. I don't know if we can forgive this. Ivy, no message. Just removed me from Instagram, blocked my number, and posted a black and white photo of her bouquet with the caption, 'When people show you who they are, believe them.'" A few friends texted when they saw the stories. Some said I was brave. Some just said damn. One old college roommate sent me a popcorn emoji. But after the buzz wore off, I was alone. Really alone. And I realized how much of my life I had wrapped around these people. How many hours I'd spent trying to earn their approval. How many vacations, birthdays, and paychecks I'd sacrificed just to stay on their radar. I didn't have much left outside of them. So I started building. Quietly. Slowly. First thing I did was uninstall every app that made me feel like I was watching someone else's highlight reel while sitting in my own blooper reel. Instagram, gone. Facebook, deleted. Group chats, muted. I cleared my apartment of anything that reminded me of the wedding, tossed the suit, recycled the program, and buried the printed itinerary in the bottom of the trash. Then I took a deep breath and did something terrifying. I took time off work. Real time. Not just a long weekend. I had PTO saved up and hadn't used it for more than travel related to family in years. So I took 3 weeks. And I made a list. Not a to-do list. A to-be list. I wanted to be grounded. I wanted to be confident. I wanted to be seen, not just as someone useful, but as someone worthy. So I started doing the things I used to say I didn't have time for. I read books. Not self-help. Fiction. Stories with characters who were messy and brave and made bad decisions, but still found peace. I signed up for a woodworking class at a local studio just because I'd always wanted to try it. Turns out I wasn't half bad at it. Something about using my hands, measuring something carefully, and making it real, that steadied me. I reconnected with a friend from college who now lived 2 cities over. We met up halfway for drinks and ended up talking for 6 hours. She told me about her new job, her divorce, her dog, her garden. I told her about Italy, about the envelope, about everything. She didn't flinch. She just said, "Good. Someone had to do it." I didn't cry then, but I did later, in my car, on the way home. It felt like the first time in weeks someone had seen me and not asked for an explanation. Work was a saving grace too. I'd always been decent at my job, IT systems analyst at a mid-sized firm, but I'd never leaned into it. I was always too distracted by family stuff, too drained from the emotional labor. But now, with all that noise gone, I actually had focus. I volunteered to lead a project that had been circling for months. Stayed late. Showed up early. My boss noticed. He asked me if I'd ever considered a promotion. I hadn't, but now I did. The momentum grew from there. I didn't just rebuild. I upgraded. Week by week, I started to feel stronger, lighter, like I was finally living a life that wasn't built around keeping the peace in a war I never signed up for. Ivy still hadn't contacted me. My parents sent one email, a classic guilt trip dressed as concern. "We just hope you realize how much you've hurt your sister. She's heartbroken. We all are." I didn't reply. Not yet. Because this time, I wanted to finish becoming someone I was proud of before walking back into the fire. And I had no illusions about what I'd face when I did. But still, I was starting to feel ready. Like maybe I wasn't just the ghost in the family anymore. Maybe I was finally something more. A few weeks later, something strange happened. I got a call from Drew. Yeah, that Drew. I almost didn't answer. Thought maybe it was a prank or a pocket dial. But I picked up. He sounded different. Tired. Honest. "Hey," he said. "I know it's probably weird to hear from me. I wanted to say thank you." I didn't speak. Just let him talk. She told me it was fake at first. Said you made it up. Then she cracked. Told me the truth. Said it wasn't your business to share, but she never denied it. I exhaled slowly. "I didn't do it to hurt you." "I know," he said. "That's why I'm calling. You saved me from marrying someone who lied to my face for years. And you did it knowing you'd be the villain." I swallowed hard. "She told me you always did everything for your family," he continued. "But that nobody really did anything for you." I didn't get it then. I do now. He paused. "Just, thanks, Mitchell." Then he hung up. I stared at the screen for a long time. That was the moment I knew I'd done the right thing, even if it cost me everything else. Because I was done being the safe, silent sibling who swallowed truth just to keep everyone else comfortable. And now? Now I had something I never did before. Myself. But I wasn't done yet. Because I knew eventually, the family would come knocking. And when they did, I'd be ready. It started with a wedding invitation. Not Ivy's, obviously. This one came in a pale blue envelope with silver calligraphy and a wax seal I nearly threw away, thinking it was some upscale junk mail. But when I flipped it over and saw the return address, my heart stopped. Lauren. Lauren and James invite you to celebrate their wedding. It read, followed by a date 6 months out, a vineyard in Sonoma Valley, and an RSVP website. I hadn't spoken to Lauren since the Italy incident. Our last interaction was a blunt one-liner she texted me after I landed. "I don't know what you thought you were doing, but you humiliated all of us. Don't contact me." That was 9 weeks ago. 9 weeks of silence. No calls, no texts, no surprise visits from mom pretending she just happened to be in the area. Nothing. Until now. The invitation was deliberate, calculated. I could feel it. And yet, it was also a window. A small, gold-trimmed crack in the wall that had gone up after the wedding disaster. And while I had no interest in sipping rose with people who thought I didn't photograph well, I also understood something new about myself since Italy. I didn't want back in. I wanted closure, control, a conclusion. And if this was the stage, I'd be ready with my own script. But first, I had to know what I was walking into. I waited a few days before visiting the RSVP link. Lauren's wedding website was exactly what I expected, overly curated, painfully formal, and soaked in passive-aggressive aesthetic choices. A white and navy color palette. Engagement photos on a rocky beach in black and white. A section titled Our Story, which rewrote their college relationship like it was a Jane Austen novel, not a series of messy breakups and two nearly overlapping relationships. And of course, a tab called Bridal Party. Guess who wasn't in it? No bridesman this time. But you know who was? Ivy. Front and center. Maid of honor. Still glowing, still golden, despite the train wreck of a wedding she left behind like an abandoned movie set. I stared at her photo for a long time. Her smile looked exactly like it had the moment before Drew read the envelope. Bright, curated, and completely unaware of the wreckage waiting to hit her. Seeing her standing by Lauren's side again made one thing painfully clear. My sisters had circled the wagons. Closed ranks. And they hadn't just cut me out. They'd replaced me. I clicked through the registry next. $200 wine glasses, $800 espresso machine, a $5,000 honeymoon fund with a custom note. For our dream trip to Santorini. I almost laughed. There was no mention of family drama, no hint of the nuclear fallout that had leveled the last wedding. Just curated perfection. But something strange happened when I reached the bottom of the page. A guest book. Open. Public. And there, in pale gray text, I saw the name Andrew R. Drew. It was a single comment. Written 3 days before I got the invitation. Hope the second wedding goes better than the first. Cheers. It was subtle, but it was there. My first real clue. And just like that, I knew exactly what I had to do. Because if Lauren and Ivy wanted to act like Italy never happened, if they wanted to rewrite the narrative like I was the villain and they were the elegant victims, fine. Let them. I'd play along. I'd even show up. But I wouldn't be showing up empty-handed. The first thing I did was call Emma. She was the one friend who had stuck by me through everything. The college friend I'd reconnected with after the wedding. The one who said, "Good. Someone had to do it," when I told her what I'd done. She was smart, grounded, and had the kind of dry sense of humor that made everything feel a little less heavy. She picked up on the second ring. If this is about Lauren's wedding, I already bought a black dress just in case it turns into a funeral. I grinned. That's why I'm calling. We met for coffee the next morning. I laid everything out. Lauren's sudden invite. Ivy's new role as maid of honor. The silence that had stretched like a canyon between me and the rest of the family. Emma listened carefully, then leaned forward and asked the question I'd been circling all week. What do you want out of this? I thought about it. Really thought about it. Not revenge, I said. Not exactly. I want them to stop pretending I don't exist. I want to remind them that I see everything. That they don't get to write me out of the story and still use my name when it's convenient. Emma nodded. Then let's write you back in. Big. We started planning. Not chaos. Not destruction. This wasn't about burning the vineyard down or pulling another envelope stunt. This was about exposure. Clarity. Holding up a mirror they couldn't look away from. And the first piece of that mirror was Drew. I hadn't spoken to him since his thank you call. But something about that comment on the wedding website told me he wasn't done. That maybe he still had a few cards to play. I reached out with a short, careful message. Hey, I saw your note on Lauren's guest book. I think we're on the same page. Can we talk? He responded within an hour. We met in person. A quiet cafe on a Thursday afternoon. He looked thinner, more tired. But there was a new steel in his posture, like someone who'd spent a long time searching for the floor and finally found it. I didn't think you'd actually reach out, he said. I didn't think you'd answer. He smiled faintly. Ivy called me 3 times the week after the wedding. I didn't pick up. Eventually, she left a voicemail saying it was better this way. That I wasn't built for her lifestyle. What lifestyle is that? He shrugged. Lying. Spending money that isn't hers. Posting grief selfies 2 hours after a breakup and asking for skincare brand deals. I snorted. Sounds familiar. We talked for nearly 2 hours. Turns out, Drew still had access to some shared digital folders from Ivy's old photography business. He hadn't shut them down yet. And inside those folders were receipts. Literal and metaphorical. High-res images of Ivy's real invoices, double-booked contracts, unpaid vendors she ghosted, even a half-drafted email to a fake client she used to funnel refund money into her personal Venmo. I didn't want to use this stuff, Drew admitted. But seeing her back on that website like nothing happened? Yeah, I'll help. He sent everything to a shared drive. That was the second piece. The third came from an unexpected place. 2 weeks before the wedding, I got a call from a blocked number. I almost ignored it. But something made me answer. It was my grandmother, Nana, the one person in our family who had always seen through the noise. I know what you did, she said without preamble. I braced myself. If you're calling to tell me I ruined the wedding, I'm calling to say thank you. I froze. Ivy needed a wake-up call. Lauren's been controlling since she was in diapers. And your parents? They're more invested in keeping up appearances than keeping their kids grounded. I didn't know what to say. My throat tightened. You've always been kind, she continued. Too kind. But kind doesn't mean weak. And I'm glad you're finally drawing lines. We talked for nearly an hour. And before we hung up, she said something that changed everything. If you want to come to the wedding, I'll make sure you're not alone at your table. Just say the word. That was the final piece. Because I wasn't going just to watch. I was going to show them. But not through confrontation. Through presence. I'd walk in with my head high, wearing the tailored navy suit I bought for myself. Not for a ceremony. Not for a performance. For me. Emma would come as my date. Not in any romantic way, but as my ally. Someone who saw me before any of this. And who didn't flinch when the spotlight hit. Drew would be there too. Not as a guest, but as a quiet presence at the bar, ready with receipts if the narrative tried to twist itself again. And Nana? She'd make sure I had a seat where everyone could see me. Not to make a scene, but to remind them I existed. Fully, clearly, unapologetically. I spent the next 2 weeks preparing, not just logistics, but mentally. I went to therapy, talked through the guilt that still clung to my ribs like smoke. My therapist asked me what forgiveness looked like. I said I wasn't sure, but I knew it didn't mean forgetting. And it definitely didn't mean pretending. When the day came, I packed light. Emma and I flew in the night before. We stayed at a modest inn 5 minutes from the vineyard. Nothing fancy, just peaceful. The morning of the wedding, I put on the suit, adjusted my tie, and stared at my reflection. Not bad, Mitchell. Not bad at all. I'd walked into Ivy's wedding hoping to be seen. I was walking into Lauren's knowing who I was. And that made all the difference. The sun dipped low over Sonoma Valley, casting the vineyard in that late afternoon golden light that makes every photo look like a dream. Rows of grapevines stretched into the distance, strung with fairy lights. A string quartet played something soft and forgettable near the white-draped altar. It was the kind of scene that made people forget their problems. I didn't forget mine. I arrived at the venue with Emma by my side, calm and composed. She wore a sleek, black dress, simple, elegant, and an expression that said, "Try me." I wore the navy suit. Not the beige $1,200 disaster Ivy had picked. This one was mine. Tailored. Sharp. Quietly expensive. The kind of outfit you wear when you no longer need permission to take up space. Nana had kept her promise. We were seated at a round table just left of center, directly across from the bridal party. Not the back row. Not the sidelines. Right there in the middle of the story they were trying to write without me. Lauren hadn't seen me yet. Neither had Ivy. But I saw them. Lauren looked exactly how I expected. Poised, polished, tight smile barely hiding the stress behind her eyes. She was directing the event like a general in heels, whispering orders to the planner, adjusting her dress with calculated grace. Ivy stood nearby, in a champagne gown that shimmered too much. Her hair was styled in soft curls that looked effortless, but I knew better. They were both still trying to keep up the performance. Let them. The ceremony went by quickly. Generic vows. Too many jokes about spreadsheets. A slightly forced kiss. Everyone clapped. Cameras clicked. The whole thing was a perfectly filtered moment waiting to be posted. And then it was time for the reception. That's where everything changed. It started small. A toast. The DJ tapped the mic and announced that the maid of honor would be giving a speech. Ivy stood, glass in hand, smile bright. I leaned back, folded my hands, and waited. Lauren and I have been best friends since she taught me how to steal Mom's heels when I was 5. Ivy began, laughter bubbling around her. We've been through everything together. Breakups, college, spray tans, therapy, more polite laughter. And now, we get to be married women together. Sisters, wives, queens. The room chuckled again. I just want to say, Lauren, you deserve happiness. You've earned it. And I'm so glad you found someone who sees how incredible you are. She lifted her glass. To love, to loyalty, and to leaving the past where it belongs. Her eyes found mine on the last line. There it was. The shot across the bow. I raised my glass and smiled. And then it was my turn. I hadn't planned to speak. I wasn't even on the schedule. But Nana, bless her, stood up just as the DJ reached for the next song. Excuse me, she said into the mic, surprising everyone. Before we move on, I'd like to invite someone very special to say a few words. All heads turned. Mitchell, Nana said, would you join us? I stood slowly, calmly, and took the mic. The room held its breath. Most of you know me, I began. Some of you probably wish you didn't. Scattered chuckles. But I'll keep this short. This day is about love, about family, and about truth. I saw Ivy shift in her seat. Lauren, I've known you my whole life. You're organized, driven, ambitious. You always get what you want. And James. I turned to the groom. Good luck, man. Laughter again. A little too nervous. But here's the thing, I said, voice steady. Real love, the kind that lasts. It isn't built on showmanship or control. It's built on honesty, on seeing someone fully and loving them anyway. I paused. Let it breathe. And that's why I hope your marriage is different from your wedding. I hope it's not curated. I hope it's real. Silence. I smiled. To the bride and groom. Polite applause. Some awkward. I sat down. Emma leaned over. That was good. I nodded. Wait for it. Because the toast wasn't the play. The flash drive was. 10 minutes later, Drew walked in. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just present. He wore a black shirt, black slacks, and a calm expression. He moved to the edge of the crowd, where the open bar met the tech booth. The DJ looked up, surprised. Drew leaned in, said something, and handed him the drive. It was labeled, Playback Slide, Lauren and Ivy's Legacy. The DJ hesitated, then shrugged. The screen behind the head table flickered. The music dimmed, and the slideshow began. It started normally, photos of Lauren and James, childhood shots, the classic How We Met montage. Everyone smiled, relaxed. Then the screen went black. A new slide appeared. Behind the filter, the real Ivy and Lauren. Gasps. And then, receipts. Screenshots of Ivy's double-booked clients. Texts where she bragged about lying to Drew. Even a short audio clip from the infamous call with Lauren. Drew's too dumb to figure it out. He thinks the Botox went into a new camera lens. Laughter on the tape. Silence in the room. Lauren stood, panic rising in her face. Turn it off, she hissed to the DJ. He fumbled. Drew calmly pulled the plug himself. But the damage was done. People were already whispering. Phone's out. Ivy's face was white. Lauren looked like she'd swallowed glass. James turned to her. What was that? Lauren opened her mouth. Closed it. Nana stood up again. Well, she said. That was certainly more honest than Ivy's toast. Some guests laughed. Ivy bolted from her seat and stormed outside. Lauren followed. James trailed behind, still asking questions she couldn't answer. The crowd thinned. Some guests left. Others milled around, unsure whether to keep dancing or call an Uber. I stayed in my seat. Calm. Collected. Emma squeezed my hand. You did it, she said. No, I said softly. They did it to themselves. I just gave them a mirror. We stayed another 20 minutes. Said polite goodbyes to a few old family friends. Thanked Nana. Then slipped out before the newlyweds returned. I don't know what happened between Lauren and James after that. I don't know if he forgave her or if he packed his bags that night. But I do know she didn't post a single wedding photo for 2 weeks. When she finally did, the captions were oddly vague. No mention of Ivy. No mention of the reception. Ivy went dark on social media. Deleted her business accounts. Last I heard, she moved to Arizona. Rebranding, apparently. My parents called a week later. Mom cried. Said she didn't recognize us anymore. Dad asked if we could all talk. I said maybe. Eventually. But I meant it this time. I wouldn't come back until I was met with real accountability, not guilt. As for me, I went back to my quiet apartment, kept going to therapy, took on more leadership at work. I started dating again, for real this time, not as a distraction, but as a person who finally understood his own worth. Emma and I stayed close, best friends who'd been through war together. One night, she asked me if I regretted any of it. I thought for a long moment. No, I said, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't the backup plan. I wasn't the afterthought. She smiled. You were the main character. And she was right. Because in a family obsessed with image, I finally stopped posing. I stopped waiting to be chosen. And I chose myself. I didn't ruin their fairy tale. I just ended the illusion they built on someone else's silence.